When you start to define complex application architectures that are distributed across multiple servers, part of the design that you need to architect for, of course, is simply the way that you're going to parse the functionality of your application, the way you're going to host that, the way that they're going to communicate. Part of that also, a key part of that, is security. And how are you going to define and control communication to the different components of your application? That capability, the ability to control that, is built into Azure networking. Now, it actually takes two forms depending on whether you're using the Azure Service Management model, which is the original Azure module version 1, or the Azure Resource Management model version 2. In the version 1, we have what are called access control lists. Okay. In version 2, we have a more evolved version of that, which is network security groups, but it takes the same concepts that we have in access control lists and just gives you more flexibility. All right. So covering these will give you at least a foundation of the other, and this is not a infrastructure course, so we won't go too deep. Anyways, access control lists give you access to a specific endpoint. So if I've got a virtual machine and it's got an HTTP endpoint, I can set up the network security group for, or excuse me, the access control list for that. All right. By default, you have an access control list in place that denies all incoming traffic. Okay, so if I just create a virtual machine and I don't add anything to it, I don't provide any access, then it's not going to have the ability to have incoming traffic. And usually you want to add in some ability to do that. Okay. Now, when you add an endpoint to a machine, the ACL is going to be modified by default to allow all inbound traffic for that endpoint. So if I create a virtual machine and I add an HTTP endpoint to that virtual machine, by default it's going to get an ACL that's going to allow all traffic in there. Then what you do is you change access by either whitelisting with a permit to certain address ranges, right? Or you can deny access, you can blacklist and deny access to address ranges as well. And so that's going to be an address-based, essentially a firewall solution at the endpoint level. Okay, and with network security groups, that concept is taken and you get much more flexibility. You have what's called a tuple that includes both the input and destination, source and destination, not only IP address, but also the port. So you get a much more granular control over it, and it can be applied at multiple levels. But the concepts are basically the same, whether it is the access control list for version 1 or the network security group for version 2, it's really giving you an Azure level ability to control access to your underlying virtual machines. Remember, you can always go into the virtual machines, and you should go into the virtual machines and configure the firewalling for those, but this layers security on top of that.